Just last summer, in July of 2023, the U.S. Congress held a hearing on UAP, where 3 official witnesses spoke of UFOs in our airspace. One of those men was former intelligence official David Grush, and he mentioned the word biologics. Now, to everyone in the UFO community, this adds some credibility to the rumors of alien bodies here on Earth, in some secret places, in some secret programs. Welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and on this channel, I'm researching and reporting on anomalous phenomena of all kinds, with an emphasis on the most curious anomaly of them all, UFOs or UAP, and the non-human intelligence who operate the craft. I started this channel a year ago, and I've read over 25 books since on the subject. I've attended a major UFO conference 2 years in a row now, and I've watched and listened to countless hours of top-tier podcasts and interviews, and I'm bringing it all to you in one place with just a little bit of my own perspective and experience in the mix. You can't really get into the alien topic without getting into the very nature of reality itself, so I'm also exploring consciousness studies, spirituality, psychic phenomena, and how it all comes together in a bigger picture understanding that can help us to frame our questions and thinking around the topic of aliens. So if you're here, you probably know that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that aliens have been visiting the Earth for a long time. But the pile of data we have seems muddy in some ways, because we're dealing with a huge range of experiences, reports, and claims, and if you don't look at it carefully, it becomes all too easy to dismiss the whole thing. For example, I just finished a book about a self-proclaimed abductee who refers to her experiences as dreams, even though, at the beginning of the book, she states that everything she's describing really did happen. As you read her story, it seems as though all of her abductions occurred overnight, and in the morning she was back where she started, sometimes with physical markings and sometimes not. This book is called Beyond My Wildest Dreams, Diary of a UFO Abductee, and the author is Carlsberg. Now, I'm very skeptical and open-minded, and I will not write off Kim's experiences as just dreams. However, there's not a lot of clear evidence to suggest that anything real in the physical sense occurred. At the end of this episode, I'm going to give you another tidbit from Luis Minero's book, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience, and I think this piece could be a key to understanding some of these types of experiences. But first, do you remember Chris Bledsoe? I talked about him in episode 14 of Shock's Talks. Well, I met him at Contact in the Desert in person, and his wife even took pictures of us. In Bledsoe's book, UFO of God, you really get the sense that something came down in the woods and physical beings came out of it. There are so many accounts to comb through, and they have different tones, but many shared themes. This is exactly why consciousness studies are so important when looking at this phenomena. The thing about going down the quantum physics or consciousness studies rabbit hole is you learn quickly that physical matter reality is not all there is, and our current science is catching up as we speak. In ancient times, spiritual practitioners gained their own direct understandings about the nature of reality and consciousness through meditation, with no tools of measurement beyond their own direct experiences. This direct experience is still available to any of us, and that's why I'm also studying and applying myself to the practice of out-of-body experiences. Going out of body, or as my favorite scientist Tom Campbell puts it, shifting data streams, is an ability that we all have, at least theoretically. And it seems to me that some people, willing or not, are thrust into these experiences with little to no context for understanding what might be going on. Then fear, belief, cultural assumptions, and a whole slew of additional overlays color the experience, making it really hard to tell what's going on. Now, for those who practice and study these things, techniques and approaches have been developed to help the individual process and apply whatever is gained through these lucid projections. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to how these experiences affect us on personal levels and what data is gleaned that can be applied to our everyday reality. In the end, a lot of these claims of contact are only significant to the contactee. It's true that a lot of contactees receive information about taking better care of our planet, but at the end of the day, it's still on all of us to make that choice and follow through with it. Now, where the world governments are concerned, it's the information that pertains to advanced technology that they're all after, because as we all know, at our current level of collective consciousness maturity, we have a long way to go, and our powers that be seem to want to blow things up. They also want to control the markets and the people. So if aliens or their artifacts can be of use to these power mongers, well, you can see why the cover-up is going strong. At Contact in the Desert this year, I sat at a table with Yvonne Smith, a highly respected and famous hypnotherapist and counselor to alien abductees. Yvonne told our table that the latest message from a client under hypnosis was directly for her, from the aliens, and this had never happened before. The message was this: disclosure will not come from the powers that be, it will come from the contactees. So needless to say, I'm interested in even the craziest sounding stories because you never know what we might uncover by weaving them all together. And Kim Carlsberg was a patient of Yvonne Smith's back in the 90s. Kim was a normal woman by all accounts, a photographer whose boyfriend at the time created the show Baywatch, and she worked on that show. They lived on the California coast, and when she first started having her experiences, she was not eager to share with anyone. In fact, it tore her life apart for a time, and then she got her bearings. And in the end, she found a path forward through various experiencer groups, and later became a hypnotherapist herself. I still wonder, in cases like Kim's, if the phenomena she was experiencing happened in some physical way or not. I don't think physical is more significant than non-physical, but it's certainly different. When it comes to UFO crash retrievals and biologics, it's very interesting to imagine that physical beings are visiting us from somewhere, and they either have the tech to travel or are able to materialize in our dimension from other realms. If we are actually separated by dimensions, and they are only able to reach us through non-physical means, it's still fascinating, and we have a lot to learn about our own non-physical capabilities. My theory is that we're dealing with all of the above, but I'm gathering more and more information every day so that I can have a clearer picture of what's going on. It's just so interesting, and I can't stop being curious. When it comes to Kim Carlsberg, these are the possibilities I can imagine based on my current understanding. Number 1, she was actually taken and then returned to her bed night after night by the gray aliens. And the aliens she described are actual physical beings just like you and me, with advanced tech and drugs or medicine that they use as tools in conjunction with a form of mental control to sedate and experiment on their subjects. She, like many others, reports telepathic communication with the Greys. Possibility number 2. This was all an experience happening outside of our subset of reality, aka it happened in non-physical matter reality, and Kim's consciousness was projected. A kind of energy body went through these things, and when that energy body returned or reintegrated with the physical body, there were sometimes physical manifestations present. The third possibility, in my mind, is that Kim had persistent and specific nightmares of a very alien nature for her entire life, and interpreted these experiences to be real because in her own individual consciousness, they were as detailed, if not more, and had as much impact as her waking life. The details of Kim's experiences do point to genetic testing and hybridization programs, where she carried alien hybrid fetuses for a short term, and those fetuses were removed by the aliens during abduction. She was instructed to provide love and care for these hybrid children at various phases in their development, and she made it very clear that she abhorred the Greys and was often fighting and terrified during these experiences. This information alone might be easily written off, but what's strange is that hundreds, if not thousands of others, have reported similar scenarios over time, all around the world, while under hypnotic regression. So it's the pile of data that seems to point to some kind of genetic program. Now let's just say, for the sake of exploring possibilities, that This whole collection of stories were along the lines of astral experiences or dreams, and that hundreds, if not thousands, of humans around the world are having dreams of alien run genetic programs. This would still be a wild thing and definitely worth investigating. But when the US government is openly discussing the craft and biologics that we have in our possession, it really makes me wonder what's going on. I've mentioned before the three major theories I consider when looking at all of this, basically physical, non-physical, or some combo. And let's dig into the combo a little further. If aliens were physically visiting and had a greater understanding of the nature of reality, the larger reality that we all share, they would be proficient at telepathy and out-of-body travel. If some humans were also able to access these abilities, then we have a bridge. Not only can we have contact physically, but we can also have non-physical contact. And the non-physical, being a subtler realm by some definitions, does indeed have an impact on the physical. I think it's likely that we are being visited in both ways, and the implications are both terrifying and maybe positive at the same time. Kim, like so many others, made the most of her trauma and is at peace with it now. She still dreads the tests and visits. She still has a hard time sleeping, but she's alive, and I saw her in person at the conference. She struck me as a sincere and reasonable person. I think about the traumas inflicted on me by humans from my own experience and the ways in which I've been able to rise above. This doesn't excuse what happened, it doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't make me want more, but in some weird way, I feel like it was what my soul needed to progress on my path. So somehow I've made it work. This is my take on Kim's overall attitude and the attitude of many abductees. They make it work. They sink or they swim. Does this mean that aliens are some dark angels prodding us to evolve, or does it simply show the power and resilience of the human soul or spirit? This is just a question to ponder. So, interesting side note about this book, there's a friend who Kim mentions who she goes to in a moment of distress, and this is the same person who illustrated her book, which is full of all kinds of artistic interpretations of her experiences. And that illustrator is Darryl Anka. And I looked him up and realized he's actually a famous channeler of an entity called Bashar, or a collective called Bashar. So I was surprised when I found that out because she doesn't talk about it in the book, but maybe channeling will have to be a topic for a future episode of Shocks Talks. So I promised you a key for understanding from Luis Minero's book, and now I'm going to give it to you. Now, before we do, let's just think about the fact that there are many different systems out there for categorizing the various bodies beyond the physical body. So in yoga, the bodies are called koshas, which means something like a sheath, sheaths. I learned about these growing up, and I'm pretty sure there are different ways of laying these out as well, but here's an example of koshas that we can compare to Minero's system. Annamaya kosha is the physical body. Pranamaya kosha is the energy body, like chi or ki or vital energy, vital life force. And this is considered one of the three subtle bodies. Manomaya kosha is the mental body. Vijnanamaya kosha is the wisdom body, and that's the last of the subtle bodies. And this one is more about intuitive knowing as opposed to mental thoughts. And Anandamaya kosha is referred to as the bliss body. Now, on the note of koshas, I just want to remind us all that ancient yogis created systems for navigating the non-physical. And the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is the practical handbook when it comes to that knowledge. I'm going to refer to the sutras more in coming episodes, but today I was just thinking about how many abductees have had to raise their own consciousness up in order to become free. This is a common theme, and maybe it's a response to the trauma, and maybe it relates to a larger spiritual arc. It's kind of like the concept of renewing or recycling the Holothosene, which we talked about in the episode right before this one. And that is a concept from Luis Minero's book, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience. A lot of people find a spiritual path that allows them to gain some sense of agency within their experiences. So in a big picture way, maybe alien contact and traumatic abduction experiences just happen to be the specific version of a spiritual path that some individuals are on in a given lifetime. In any case, there are many, many paths when it comes to raising your energy in order to overcome obstacles of all kinds, physical and non-physical, and much of this wisdom can be found in the ancient yogic teachings. A few examples include these sutras from Book 2 of Patanjali's Sutras. In the presence of one firmly established in nonviolence, all hostilities cease. This one stands out to me in relation to abduction because many people believe that the interactions with aliens mirror human treatment of animals in the meat and medical industries, the way we test and capture and sometimes even torture the creatures of the earth. Many abductees and contactees become vegetarian or vegan as a result of their experiences, and a lot of them also become environmentalists. Another sutra reads, "To one established in truthfulness, actions and their results become subservient." To me, this is about integrity and the power that living in truth can bring us, both energetically but also when we are on a path that involves telepathy. A lot of people who experience telepathy have meltdowns around the violation aspect because we are so used to operating in layered secrecy as humans. We kind of take for granted that our mind might be more like a radio or more like an open channel than a contained, safe space. Having your own mind or inner sanctum penetrated can feel destabilizing on one end of the spectrum and can be enough to drive a person completely crazy on the other end. Establishing yourself in truth eliminates one layer of this fear and disorientation in a telepathic landscape. Even just considering the possibility that your thoughts are in some ways as open to the world as words that leave your lips, well, it's a good exercise. It's a thought experiment and a meditation. And if done for years in all sincerity, this practice can completely change your life. And finally, one of my favorite sutras of all times, "By contentment, supreme joy is gained." This one just makes me think of the power of people just making the most of whatever experience they are given in life and how liberating that can be. So back to Luis Minero's description of the subtle bodies. In his book, and this work is derived from Wagner Allegretti, you have the soma, which is the physical body. Step 1 to mastering projective techniques is taking care of the physical body and reaching a fully developed maturity level. And according to this body of work, that happens just naturally at around the age of 26. The energisoma, or bioenergies, is thought of as the vehicle of energies, so it's kind of like the energy body. Maturity of this body consists of being able to perceive, understand, and control energy at will. Next, we have the psychosoma, and that's the emotions. The maturing of this body involves being able to recognize, understand, and deal with emotions, as well as being able to express emotions and sentiments in a mature and balanced fashion without becoming overrun by them. And finally, there's the mental soma, the vehicle of discernment and the root of all thought processes. Maturity of this body is marked by the ability to understand and formulate ideas and thoughts and be able to put them into practice and make better decisions. Minero describes non-physical helpers as more mature consciousnesses, and he says that they are more mental somatic. So this implies that they are lucid, organized, rational, ethical, knowledgeable, and disciplined. So the reason I think these bodies could be a key to understanding at least some of the abduction stories out there is because according to Minero, it's the different bodies that access different realms or dimensions. In a recent episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, he had Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on, and they were discussing a Navy textbook. It was part of a training manual. And this book was discontinued at some point, but George said he actually has a copy of it. And in this book, they talk about communications that take place on different planes. So they also, in this book, described 4 types of alien beings. I'll link the episode below, but the clip I'm referring to, if you want to skip to it, it happens about 1 hour and 57 minutes into that episode. The text these guys were taught from was titled Introductory Space Science Volume 2, and an entire chapter 33 deals entirely with UFO considerations. I'm quoting from the podcast now. This is what they were reading from that book. He quoted from page 455 that 50,000 virtually reliable people have reported sighting unidentified flying objects. This leaves us with the unpleasant possibility of alien visitors to our planet, or at least alien-controlled UFOs. According to the Academy textbook, if such beings are visiting Earth, 2 questions arise. 1, why haven't they attempted to contact us officially? And 2, why haven't there been accidents which would have revealed their presence? Why no contact? Well, that question is very easy to answer in any of several ways. 1, we may be the object of intensive sociological and psychological study. In such studies, you usually avoid disturbing the test subjects and their environment. And 2, you do not contact a colony of ants, and humans may seem that way to aliens. A variation on that is a zoo is a fun place to visit, but you don't contact the lizards. 3, such contact may have already taken place secretly and may have taken place on a different plane of awareness, and we are not yet sensitive to communications on such a plane. At the end of this passage, there was a recommendation to officers to take an open and skeptical mind, we've heard this before, and not take an extreme position on any side of the question. So this part of that episode felt relevant to my notes because of the comment about various planes. In the studies of Tom Campbell and Luis Minero, the various planes are explored and described at length. In terms of some communication happening, but not in an official government kind of way, well, that was the message Yvonne Smith conveyed at dinner at Contact in the Desert. So similar to how in Tom Campbell's system, the goal of our existence is to grow and evolve towards love, lowering entropy and amplifying cooperation and harmony, in the school of thought that Minero comes from, there is an emphasis on what they call consciential maturity and evolving through experiences towards a more assistential or helpful way of being. In the tradition of yoga, it's very similar, purifying the body and mind, that leading to clarity and deeper understanding, more compassion, more love. And Chris Bledsoe's book, UFO of God, has a similar kind of message. In the end, he came to his own understanding, and the list goes on and on. The bottom line is, those who travel out of body, those who have anomalous experiences, and those who study the science of consciousness all seem to come to the same conclusions. There is a purpose to our seemingly small lives, and human existence is not just random, but it's for us. It's for us to grow. Ideally, we don't have to take anyone else's word for it, but through the techniques and methods these teachers have passed on, we should be able to gain our own direct experience and understanding of the nature of reality and therefore come to our own conclusions about what it all means. So what do you think? Leave me a comment if any of this resonates or sparks any ideas or questions, or even if it sparks any memories of your own anomalous experiences and how they impacted your life. This could be anything from ghosts to channeling to UFO sightings or angels or demons. So I'm only about a year into making this YouTube channel, and I've been really focusing on the research and the content and not on the production. So I apologize. So many of the videos before were shot on a front-facing camera with no editing and not the best lighting conditions, but I committed to learning and growing, and now it's time. It's been a year and I'm leveling up. I am figuring this thing out. I just learned how to make thumbnails. I haven't been doing that this whole time. And I finally just learned that I can pop up the next suggested videos at the end of this video so that you can check out some of my other content. So from here on out, you can expect a higher quality of output from me, but the content itself is still of a very high quality, even in those janky old videos that I started a year ago. And if you're interested in this stuff, I do hope that you'll take a look around my channel, check out the playlists, and see what I have to offer, because I've put a lot of effort into this, a lot of research and thought, and I'm just really fascinated by this topic and really excited to go deeper as we move forward with Shocks Talks. So in order to kind of do what we do in school and revisit some of the things we learned, I might start putting out some shorter videos here and there that kind of act as a recap or a looking back, where I'll repeat some of the same information so that we can really learn it and commit it to our memories, and so that I can give it to you in a crispier, cleaner package from here on out. So I'm definitely going to be reading more books, listening to more interviews and podcasts, and pulling together the best of the best so that we can all have a really interesting conversation and maybe one day figure this thing out. Who knows? For now, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.